Head of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, warned that any military incursion into Rafah would have devastating consequences on the Palestinian people who'd first fled there for safety and under the instruction of the Israeli army.
A military assault on Rafah would be an unbearable escalation, killing thousands more civilians and forcing hundreds of thousands to flee. It would have a devastating impact on Palestinians in Gaza, with serious repercussions on the occupied West Bank and across the wider region. All members of the Security Council and many other governments have clearly expressed their opposition to such an operation. I appeal for all those with influence over Israel to do everything in their power to prevent it.
Gabriel Elizondo joins us now live from the UN, and the UN Secretary-General with some clear and some might think strong words about Rafah.
Yeah, that's right. Of course, he's saying, as you just heard there, it would lead to devastating consequences if Israel goes forward with this military operation in Rafah. He said forcing, as you just heard there, hundreds of thousands of people to flee. Of course, flee where? That is the question. And I think the Secretary General knows the answer to that very well. There is nowhere to flee to and nowhere safe in Gaza. That's something that he's repeated over and over and over again for months now. I think the reason that you heard the Secretary General speak out today is because he clearly sees this being a critical moment as these talks continue for the release of captives and a cessation of hostilities, that this is a very critical moment right now, and that's why he wanted to lend his voice to this. It's important to point out again the wider context here. The Secretary General does not speak to Benjamin Netanyahu. The Prime Minister of Israel will not accept the Secretary General's phone calls. They have not even spoken once since October 7th. It's not because the Secretary General doesn't want to speak to Netanyahu. It's just simply that Netanyahu doesn't want to speak to him. So this is the way that the Secretary General can speak to the wider world, and he hopes that his message is heard everywhere, that it will make an impact.
Indeed, the Secretary-General was also very clear on a sort of developing story coming out of the Gaza Strip, these issues of mass graves which are now being uncovered.
Yeah, that's right. He's clearly very concerned about this. We've heard from the Secretary General's spokesperson talking about concerns over this over the last week or so, but this is the first time we've actually heard from the Secretary General himself. And he cited 390 bodies reportedly being exhumed from Al Nasser Hospital. And now the Secretary General clearly calling for what he says an independent international investigation with forensic expertise to be allowed into Gaza immediately to begin this process of an investigation on these mass graves to see who is responsible. The problem, of course, is Israel controls access to the Gaza Strip, and without Israel's permission, it is almost impossible to get experts in there. But clearly, the Secretary General is calling on an international investigation. The issue is, will Israel agree to it and open their borders to it? And what can the Secretary General do to put pressure on Israel to accept some sort of international independent, that's a key word, independent investigation?
Gabriel Elizondo there at UNHQ in New York. Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.